In the cold and wild seas of Europe, the image of fishermen who have spent their whole lives at sea has become an indispensable part of life and culture here. From the Norwegian coast to the ancient fishing villages of Scotland, Ireland or the Spanish coast, fishing and crabbing is not only a job to make a living, but also a tradition, a legacy passed down from their ancestors. Every early morning, when the mist still covers the sea, wooden or iron ships begin to leave the port, carrying the hope and experience of European fishermen. For them, the sea is not only a source of life but also a companion. A harsh challenge to overcome every day. In Norway, one of the most developed fishing areas in Europe, fishermen use gill nets, trawls and especially long lines to catch Arctic cod, a whitefish with very high economic value. They drop thousands of hooks with small baits to depths of 100 to 600 meters. Then wait for hours to collect each large, fat fish, sometimes weighing more than 20 kilograms. Meanwhile, in shallower waters such as the coast of Ireland or France, crab fishing has its own nuances. Fishermen often use crab traps, cages made of steel, with baited fish to attract crabs to crawl in. These traps are dropped to the seabed for many hours, or overnight, then pulled up by hand or specialized cameras. Each European brown crab, and spider crab, is strong, aggressive, carefully selected to be brought to shore. Fishermen here are all too familiar with having to fight strong winds and waves when searching for crabs. Scooping up nets in unpredictable weather. What is special about Europe is the harmonious combination of traditional and modern techniques. Although many fishing boats are equipped with radar systems, GPS, fish finders and hydraulic cranes, experience and sea sense are still irreplaceable. Older fishermen can predict the flow of fish just by the color of the water and the direction of the wind, while young people learn by each operation, each squeak of the crane line, each skillful cast of the net. A trip to sea can last from a few hours to a few days. Depending on the type of seafood and the fishing area, sometimes they have to anchor the boat offshore for many days, living on the sea, eating a quick bowl of hot noodles and taking a nap between the waves. In Portugal and Spain, tuna and squid fishing are also very popular. Fishermen use purse seine nets to capture huge schools of migrating fish, or cast hand lines at night to catch squid, a famous specialty in Mediterranean cuisine. The atmosphere on board is always bustling and urgent, as everyone knows that each fish or crab is a result of sweat. Effort, and can be a meal for the whole family. Despite facing many challenges, climate change, declining fishery resources, and increasingly stringent regulations from the European Union, European fishermen still cling to the sea with faith and pride in their profession. Small coastal fishing villages still retain their pristine beauty, where children learn to weave nets from a young age, where the sound of the wind blends with the sound of the waves to create the melodious music of the ocean. Europe is not only famous for its ancient architecture or long-standing civilization. But also for the image of fishermen silently contributing to the livelihood of an entire continent with their calloused hands. Courage. and intense love for the sea. Inside European fishing ports, every afternoon is a bustling and vibrant scene. When the ships dock, tons of fresh seafood are quickly unloaded onto the shore: silvery cod, glistening herring, crabs still clattering in their baskets, and blue-gray lobsters as big as an adult's forearm. Local women are also part of the labor chain. They sort the fish, clean them, pack them in ice boxes, or take them to wholesale markets that night to sell to restaurants and hotels. The air here is always filled with the salty smell of the sea. Laughter mixed with the sound of ship horns and machinery. In many parts of Europe, especially in Iceland and Norway, fishing is not only a source of income, but also the heart of the coastal economy. Communities depend entirely on the sea for their livelihoods. From catching, processing to exporting, at coastal factories, the fish are processed immediately, fleshed, frozen or canned within hours of being caught. To preserve absolute freshness, these products are then exported all over the world. From Japan, the US to Southeast Asian countries. No one would have guessed that behind the luxurious Norwegian salmon boxes or the giant king crabs served in five-star restaurants, there is the tireless work of thousands of European fishermen. Grouper cutting is a process that requires dexterity, meticulousness and understanding of the structure of this fish. First, the fish cutter needs to check if the grouper is fresh by observing the clear eyes, red gills and firm body. Then, the fish is cleaned by scaling, removing the gills and cutting open the belly to remove the organs. The fish washing process must be done carefully so as not to tear the skin or bruise the fish meat. When starting to fillet, the worker usually places the fish on its side and uses a sharp knife to cut a line from behind the gills towards the tail in the direction of the spine. The knife must be kept close to the bone to separate the fish meat optimally and not leave any meat behind. After separating the first fillet, turn the fish over and repeat the same process to get the second fillet. If the skin needs to be removed, the worker will place the skin side down on the cutting board. Hold the tail firmly and use a sharp knife to lightly slide it along the skin to separate the meat from the skin. Grouper has thick skin and firm meat, so the knife used must be very sharp and the cutting technique must be decisive. In restaurants or processing factories, this skill needs to be practiced many times to ensure speed and quality. After filleting, the fish meat can be cut into thin slices to make sashimi or into blocks to cook soup, steam, fry or grill. In addition, the head and bones of the fish are also used to make broth. Cutting grouper is not only a technical operation but also a combination of manual feeling, knife skills and understanding of the value of each part of the fish meat. The skill of cutting fish and sea eel is an art that requires sophistication, precision and many years of practical experience. First, the worker must clearly understand the body structure characteristics of each fish species, especially grouper and sea eel, two types of seafood with high value and requiring complex processing techniques. With fish, especially grouper, the cutter needs to recognize the location of the spine, small bones, thick skin and large muscle blocks to put the knife in the right position. The knife must always be kept sharp, with a thin and long blade to make long, clean cuts without crushing the meat. After the fish has been cleaned, its scales, gills and internal organs removed, it will be placed on the cutting board with the back facing up. And the worker usually starts cutting from behind the gills, sliding the knife along the spine to get the intact fillet. Each slice must be precise to the millimeter so as not to waste meat, while avoiding damaging the bones, which will affect the quality of the processing later. This skill lies not only in the hands but also in the eyes. A good cutter can see the bone line and the layer of meat through experience, without having to try the knife too many times. Meanwhile, sea eel requires a completely different skill. Eel has a smooth, slimy skin, a long body, soft meat and not many small bones. But it is very difficult to hold it still when cutting. First, the eel needs to be cleaned of slime with coarse salt or vinegar. Then the head is cut off and the belly is slit to remove the internal organs. To cut eel fillets, the worker often uses a nail or hook to fix the head to the cutting board, then holds the eel's tail and gently pulls to stretch the body. The knife is placed close to the spine, sliding evenly along the length of the eel's body. Sea eels have a main spine running down the middle of the body, so the technique of cutting along the spine is preferred, both separating the bones and maintaining the beautiful shape of the fillet. After separating the two sides of the meat, the skin is usually kept if used for grilling, but if the skin needs to be peeled, the worker will clamp the eel's tail, insert the knife between the skin and meat, and gradually pull the skin out skillfully, ensuring that the soft meat is not crushed. With Japanese sea eels, anago or unagi, the cutting skill must also meet aesthetic requirements. Each slice of meat must be flat, not torn, and even to be suitable for high-class dishes such as sushi or kabayaki. Eel cutters often have to practice for months, even years, to achieve proficiency in each movement. Both cutting fish and sea eel are not only a preliminary processing process but also an important part that determines the quality of the dish, the commercial value, and shows respect for the ingredients. Each knife stroke, each movement carries experience and patience, and those who have been in this profession for a long time often do not need to look but still feel the thickness of the meat. The position of the bones and the appropriate knife movement. It is the perfect combination of manual skills and deep understanding of each seafood species. The obvious difference between cutting fish and cutting sea eel is shown through hand movements and knife control. For fish, the knife force often needs to be decisive and stable to glide through the firm meat and tough skin like grouper without tripping or crushing the underlying muscle. Meanwhile, sea eel has soft, easily broken meat, so the hand force must be gentle. The knife just needs to glide like cutting through silk. Otherwise it will deform the fillet or separate the meat layers from each other. The craftsman must not only keep the knife sharp, but also feel the vibration of the knife when touching the bone or changing the thickness of the meat, thereby adjusting the direction and force accordingly. In addition to knife skills, placing fish or eel on the cutting board also requires following the correct routine. Fish are usually placed on their side to easily follow the spine and gills, while eels are fixed at the head to limit slipping when pulling the knife. The skin of eels is very tough and slippery, so when peeling the skin, workers often use a towel or dry paper to hold the tail firmly, helping the operation to be more stable. When peeling the skin of eels, if the hand is not steady or the knife is not sharp, the skin can be torn into small pieces, losing its aesthetic value and causing difficulties in further processing. Eel dishes such as unagi, kabayaki or grilled eel often require the eel to maintain its long, beautiful shape, without excess cuts, without tears and without exposed bones. This requires cutting skills not only in precision but also in patience and experience accumulated over time. For Japanese seafood chefs, cutting fish or eel is not simply a preliminary step but an introduction that demonstrates the level of the kitchen. determining the final quality of the dish. In addition, the cutter also needs to clearly understand the purpose of the fillet, if used for sashimi. The fish pieces need to be even, sharp and without veins or blood, if used for soup or frying. The skin or a small bone can be retained to increase fat and flavor. This skill is also passed down through generations. Each fish cutting or eel processing factory may have its own separate technique, depending on the culinary style, region and type of fish being processed. Some people also practice cutting fish with a traditional single blade knife instead of a double blade knife to ensure a more precise cut without slipping. Many veteran chefs can also distinguish the feeling of the knife gliding through red meat or white meat, recognizing freshness and muscle structure through feedback from the knife, when working in a high-end restaurant environment or a large processing factory. Speed is also an important factor. The worker has to cut hundreds of fish every day while ensuring that each slice of meat is the same, without errors. It is a combination of muscle memory, professional habits and love of the job. In the art of seafood processing, the skill of cutting fish and eel is the intersection of meticulousness, precision and passion, where each slice of the knife reflects the spirit of the craftsman.